I'm Keti Chachava. I represent the organization, the Center of Development and Democracy, where we mainly work on elections. Well, not only on elections, but we're mainly known to work on elections, and I have myself been involved as an international expert. I'm the accredited, so like we by several organizations. I have been myself observing with OSCE ODIHR elections. So we're also part of the committees and several working groups working on and trying to develop election systems in Georgia. So I'll try to be very brief, as a lot has been said from my colleagues from Georgia. I'll just try to add up a bit. Of course, we all know that elections does not only include the participants. For example, I think that when we talk about elections, of course, the first who comes to mind is it's candidates or political parties, but that's not only them, right? The elections is one of the biggest and one of the most important processes that are not only for one day. That's like a whole cycle of elections, starting from before the election processes, that a lot of things have to happen. Election day itself, and then the post-election period, when we have possibility to try to reflect our recommendations and make them work for the future and upcoming elections, to see what we can do to improve the processes. So with elections, of course, the voters are one of the most important target groups. The candidates, the activists, the political parties, the members of the election administration, or those who conduct the elections, the representatives of the CSOs, well, domestic and as well as the international ones, and also of the media, because the media has a huge role in informing society, informing actually the ideas and the vision. So when we talk about the voters, in Georgia, we have majority is actually the women in the voters list. But in that sense, I will not go into a lot of numbers. You have heard a lot from my wonderful colleagues today, but I'll try to give you some sensitivity behind that, is that we have more women in the voters list, but we need to do much more to strengthen them, to inform them more to go and vote, and not only to go and vote, but also go and vote based on the information they get. So they make the information based decision, and not only based on the feelings or based on what somebody told them. First, to empower them to go to vote, and then vote based on the programs. Because as Ms. Nana was mentioning today, that you cannot just make decisions. The parties, the internal party development is also one of the most problematic issues that we see. You cannot have democracy built by the parties which have no democracy, or like they have no understanding of democracy. Like how you can expect from someone to defend our rights when they become empowered and they themselves don't understand what it means. When we talk about the parties itself, but of course it's very important to follow the process of who is conducting the elections. The process of selecting members, there are different ways, and in our countries is also a very different way how election administration can be set up, and which I think we should also look in the future to ensure more women participation. But the thing in the Georgian administration of elections, for example, is that the problem is not that there is no high number of women in election administration. Actually, there are a lot of women in election administration. For example, on the PC level, which is this local level, the polling station level, the women are almost double times more than men across the country. But when we talk about the top management, like when we talk about who is actually in charge of these polling stations, this is the numbers which you will see of the top management from the polling station level. As the chairperson, like only 26% of women are chairpersons, and only like 43% of women are secretaries. Like secretaries in Georgian legislation is one of the most boring and one of the most unpleasant jobs you can have in election administration, because it's a lot of responsibility, that's a lot of work to do, but then you're not really seen anywhere. Like that's a job of, as we were saying, like unappreciated thing to do. So election administration, when it's composed, for example, on the CC level, which is the highest decision-making body, you just have only 10 women, the 10 men and 3 women. And so it seemed that it was mentioned today that the most job is done by women, but they're not really in charge of it. And of course, when we talk about being reflected or having people elected on the positions, first we have to empower and ensure that the candidates are women. You have to ensure that the first phase they arrive and they become a candidate in order to be elected. For For example, the number that we are showing today is thanks to the CEC. It's the first time when Central Election Commission in Georgia actually has provided the statistics themselves. So we will also update it on the Facebook or on our website. So if you're interested, it's very broken down and very good statistics provided of all the level elections and everything. But the bottom line, what I wanted to say is that we can clearly see from the numbers. Like, of course, by theory, we could always say that there's some things that support more women's participation. There are more steps that could lead us to something good or would not be that effective. But for example, one thing which we can for sure say, when we are advocating or lobbying for quotas or different ways or different steps that we see could improve the process, and Keti will for sure go into this more detailed, but you cannot skip the step which is very and most important, is it actually the election system itself. When you have election system which does not support representation, which doesn't support the pluralistic representation, you can never have, even the quotas cannot help. So in that sense, I think the first main step we all have to understand and lobby for on our local level, if we want to see more women on the elected on elected spaces, it doesn't matter on a local level, parliament or higher, we have to ensure that the election system fits it. And in that sense, majoritarian system is for sure not the one. With majoritarian system, you have absolute minority of women, like very, very few. For example, in the Georgian case, with the 75 districts, we just had only one Gamgebeli on the local level women, who was actually, she was elected on the second run. And that's it. Like, you cannot have majoritarian structure and expect increase of women participation by increasing funding or providing different sources. Because usually, and I will just say this one story, I was not planning to say it, but because it was mentioned today, we have several women from the political parties and now who are in charge in the country, and they're in the parliament, they're majority. And we had this Empowering Women's Participation Conference where we tried to advocate and lobby with the parliamentarian members of the parliament to internally in their list to include more women. And then the woman, who used to be actually from the CSO, brings a speech and says, hey, yes, actually we had one good candidate in one of the villages. And she's great, like she's organizing everything, she brings people to vote, like she's amazing. But when we offered her, like if she would want to run, she was actually thinking about it because, well, she's divorced, like she has 2 children, and like we were not sure about if people will vote for her. So we did not push her to do that. But we tried to empower people. And I'm like, okay, how do you try to empower people? Like what then the perfect candidate means? Like if the perfect candidate is not the one who has children, if the perfect candidate is not the one who is divorced, if the perfect candidate is not the woman who is actually is not married, who is then the perfect candidate? Like, if the perfect candidate doesn't exist. So the parties have to understand that we really have to do our best to make them understand that women, the way they are, based on their professionalism, because nobody discussed, like if the men have a second wife or have 5 children, then it's not the case. But with women, all this is secured, and even from the leader of the political party, who is a woman herself, you're hearing this speech, I think there's a lot to be done. And we can never say like, oh, well, even small improvements can give us a big changes. Like big changes will occur with big changes from our side and big changes on the legislation side. And also, once again, thank you for inviting. And I really hope that the experience in this room will be shared not only between the organizations who are working on the gender issues for many, many years, but to ensure that we share these experiences with those who do a lot of job in other fields, but they don't understand or they don't have a sensitivity, so-called, on the gender matters yet. We should not forget about them, and we should really try to work as much as we can. Because, for example, with elections, I can say there are 5 organizations or 6 who are attending all the closed-door meetings, who are trying to influence the decisions. And it's usually, you cannot have more, like in the sense that, of course we can be more, we can show that we are many, but in that sense you need people supporting you, not only on the political parties, but also in the civil society. We need to build more coalitions between each other. And I'm always will be thankful to my colleagues who are in this room, and for giving me this opportunity, because how to say, with classical understanding I would never get here because I'm not from gender organization as such. But I'm very thankful because I've got that understanding, and now in our recommendations we always will push for quotas, and we'll always listen to our colleagues because I know that they know way more how we can improve the situation. Well, thank you so much.